Hi and welcome to another Carpenter tutoring tutorial. I'm Amy and today we are going to talk about how to do subtraction problems that include negative numbers. And we're going to use the number line so that we can get a visual representation of how to do these problems. So let's take a look at a problem. Maybe we can look at something like -1 minus 3. Now, just like when we were doing addition with negative numbers, we can use different parts of our mathematical equation or mathematical expression to represent different pieces of how we solve this problem. So the first number always gives you your starting point, where we begin on the number line. The operation that you're doing, either addition or subtraction, tells you which direction you need to move. So addition always tells us to move to the right. Subtraction tells us to move to the left. And then the final number represents how many jumps we should take in that direction. So this situation is telling me to start at a value of -1, which is right here. Because I'm subtracting, I know that I'm going to be taking my jumps to the left, getting lower on the number line. And the 3 at the end tells me to take 3 of those jumps. 1, 2, 3. That tells me that -1 minus 3 is -4. Let's try another problem like this. Let's take a look at something like -3 minus 2. Again, the first number tells us our starting point on the number line, so we're going to begin at -3. Subtraction tells me which direction I'm going to move on the number line, so I know that I'll be moving to the left. And then the second number, 2, tells me that I need to take 2 jumps from my starting point. 1, 2. This tells me that -3 minus 2 equals -5. A pattern that we can see emerging here is that when we start with a negative number and subtract a positive number from it, we end up with a more negative answer. We keep going further into the negatives. Let's take a look at a different kind of problem, still with subtraction, but now our negative number is going to come second. Let's consider 0 minus -3. We have a little bit of a different situation here in that we have not just one minus sign, but also another minus sign acting as a negative sign. The first minus sign is going to represent the same thing that we talked about earlier. It tells us our starting direction. So this first minus sign tells us that we're going to take our jumps to the left. But here's where things change. Since we have another negative sign after this attached to the -3, this negative sign tells us to change our direction. So whatever direction we had been going, we're going to swap. The minus sign told us that we should head to the left, but this second negative sign changes that direction and tells us to actually head to the right. Taking all this together, that means we're going to start at 0, start heading to the left, but change our direction and head to the right because of our second minus sign or negative sign, and then take our 3 jumps in that direction. 1, 2, 3. So 0 minus -3 is +3. That means another way that we could think about this problem is actually 0 plus 3. So the way that I like to think about it, when I see 2 subtraction symbols or negative signs next to each other like we have here with no number in between them, since it takes 2 lines, right, the up and down line and the side to side line to draw a plus symbol, what I like to think about is that the second negative sign is actually coming over to the first and working with it to form an addition sign. So when you see those 2 subtraction symbols next to each other, you can really think of it as addition. Let's take a look at one more like this, and we'll use our sign change to double check our work. We'll start with a negative number first this time, so we'll have negatives in both positions. Let's try -4 minus -5. The first number, -4, tells us our starting point, so we'll begin here at -4. The fact that we have subtraction tells us to begin going to the left, but we have our second subtraction symbol here functioning as a negative sign. That tells us to change our direction, so we'll actually be heading to the right. And then the second number, 5, tells us how many jumps to take. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So -4 minus -5 equals +1. If we use our sign change, we can double check that this is true. Another way of thinking about this problem is -4 plus 5. This tells me to start at -4, head in the right direction, because we're using addition, and take 5 jumps in that direction. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We can see that this still gets us to the same place, positive 1. So whether we think about this as a subtraction problem with a negative number or an addition problem with a positive number, we'll end up at the same answer. Especially as you're starting to work with subtraction with negative numbers, having a visualization like the number line that we're using here can be really helpful. But it does take a bit of time and can be a little bit cumbersome. So my recommendation is to use this method to get comfortable with the ideas and concepts behind subtracting and adding with negative numbers, and then using the knowledge that you gain from that to start working through the problems more quickly and without those visual aids. So it's a really great system to use at the beginning, but don't let it become a crutch, because as we get into bigger and bigger numbers, it's going to be harder and harder to show number lines for all of those different values. But as we're just getting started, it's a great tool to use. Well, I hope it's been helpful to go over a couple subtraction with negatives problems together. Thank you so much for spending part of your day with me. Let me know in the comments if there are any other topics that you'd like to see discussed. Please be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy my content, and I'll catch you next time.